right. Welcome everyone to Active Prospect's Home Services Perspective webinar, From the Ground Up, Growth Strategies from Home Service Pros. We're excited to have you with us today. I'm Andrew Bailey, a content strategist here at Active Prospect, and I'll be moderating this exciting webinar for you. But before we jump into the good stuff, we have to go over some quick housekeeping. On the right of your screen, you'll see two icons. One says chat, the other says questions. The chat icon is for reactions and general comments. General comments such as, oh no, not me again. But also, more importantly, we are going to pin a comment to the top of this that for any time, if you want to save some time for after this webinar to continue the conversation, you can feel free to do that. The questions icon is where you'll submit any questions that you have for our two expert panelists. We'll try to address some periodically, but have no fear, we have saved some time for a Q&A at the end. Also, we'll be tossing a few polls your way to help steer our conversation. And if for any reason you have to drop off the webinar early, no worries. A recording will be sent your way tomorrow. Now, let's meet the stars of the show. Ryan, Dion, would you introduce yourselves?
Ryan DuCharme, VP of Marketing for WinChoice, longtime Active Prospect webinar watcher, first-time participant. So thanks for having me.
And Dion Green, Senior Customer Success Manager here at Active Prospect. A little bit about me. A lot of you know that I am in and around the home services world. I kind of got my start at a previous employer at a construction software company. So day in and day out, I work with every type of GC and subcontractor that you can think of, thousands of them. And that helped me, the experience there helped me move over just about nearly 4 years ago to Active Prospect, where I now work with some of not only our largest home services brands, but also the largest home services brands in the country. So whether you know who I am or this is a true introduction, appreciate everybody joining and hope you can take something away from the webinar.
Dion is also a Cincinnati Bengals fan, so he knows how to help steer you through dark times. Thank you for those intros, gentlemen. Let's get into it. Ryan, let's start with a loaded question. The big picture. What does the current home services landscape look like as we head toward 2026?
Lots of growth so far in 2025, much like the last several years post-COVID. Certainly moving at a much faster pace right now. And you kind of have to be moving at a faster pace right now with the introduction of AI and just new technology into the industry. So I think we're holding on for dear life at the moment. Everything's going really well, and we're excited about kind of the overall growth of the industry. We specifically operate in window replacement and roofing replacement services, and we actually manufacture our own windows here right in America in Central Arkansas, which is really cool. And so getting to see a ton of different aspects of growth to the company this year, not just the replacement side and the installation side, sales and marketing, obviously, with me being the VP of marketing, but actually getting to see the facility grow as well, which is really, really exciting and exciting for the state of Arkansas as we're bringing a bunch of jobs along with that.
Have changes in the industry accelerated in the last few years, or is home services just kind of always operating at hyperspeed?
Yeah, it's funny. I've been in and around home services for 14 years now, in both a lead generation capacity and lead buying capacity with brands. And I think what's really interesting is other industries would say that we lag behind them often. That's what I hear about construction and home services, is like we're lagging behind the rest of the tech forward industries. But I think anymore the companies that I see that are winning in each of their respective services are the companies that are adopting that kind of like hyper speed and tech forward approach. Certainly we are at this point as well. And so I think that's where the evolution is going to come from and continue to come from. And of course, AI being a big part of that, and being a big part of what companies are trying to institute in their businesses to continue that hyper growth. I think that's going to be, really interesting over the next 3 to 5 years to see what happens there.
Yeah, Ryan, that's a kind of a point I wanted to make as well. Like even thinking back, how crazy it's been that we're a little bit more than 5 years since COVID. Thinking back to that time, I know, right, that was a piece of acceleration there where you had a bunch of people sitting at home and they had nothing better to do than look at what's wrong with their roof or their bathroom or their windows, and want to get help there. And it kind of also tie back to that first question. I kind of had a different perspective, different perspective, additional perspective that I wanted to provide there. And that's from kind of a real estate aspect of it. So some people may know this, some not, but I'm actually a licensed real estate agent here in Ohio. And so looking at from the scope of a home buyer and a home seller, right, you're looking at 2025 into 2026. In my personal opinion, this could be debatable, but in my opinion, the having a seller's market that we have right now actually helps with the home services industry, because if you look at it from the seller's perspective, right, a lot of those folks may know that they're going to be selling their home in 6 to 18 months, and they're going to want to make sure that they get the biggest bang for their buck when they're ready to sell it. So they want that home to look as good as possible, and those folks are going to be reaching out to you, Ryan, to get help for windows, and other companies to do their bath and all different things to the house. And then you also look at the buyer perspective, which you have some buyers that, because it's a seller market, for whatever reason, one reason or another, maybe it's financial, who knows, but they may not be ready to leave their home. So if they decide for their family, hey, I'm going to be in my home, I want to make it as comfortable as possible, right? And so what can I do to upgrade and make sure that we're in the best spot? And so those folks are reaching out and gonna be needing help as well. So at least the rest of 2025 and going into at least half of 2026, I think that's actually a part that people don't think about, that's going to kind of help grow and continue to speed up the home services industry.
Yeah, I agree with that perspective. I did not know you're a real estate agent. That's new to me.
I didn't either.
But interesting stuff there. And I think, just kind of the gridlock, you're right. The gridlock we're seeing in the housing market right now is definitely leading to people doing more projects because they know that they're going to stay in their homes longer. So, and I see that continuing even with easing of interest rates.
Speaking of those projects and kind of tying it into our growth conversation, Ryan, has WinChoice still experienced growth in 2025? And if so, how does that compare to last year?
Yeah, I mean, we're up actually close to 100% over last year, or we should be toward the end of the year. So yeah, experiencing tremendous growth. I think one interesting aspect to that is, what comes along with it for us is we have to make the windows and sell the windows and install the windows, right? So like the growth that we're experiencing is not just in like lead gen growth or in sales growth. It's actually in growth of output from a manufacturing capacity as well, which is a whole nother layer to business that I have not been a part of at this point. So it's really exciting and interesting to see that part as well. Just a very different way to kind of grow the business and have aspects to the business that, are additional like growth levers. So
what strategies specifically have been implemented that have led to that growth you've experienced?
Yeah, I mean, kind of going back a year, I think I've been in my position full time for just about a year at this point. When I joined the company, they were humming along. I think the top 500 came out recently, and you saw WinChoice at, I want to say 54. Last year we did right around 60 million. They've kind of hovered in that like 40 to 60 million range for the last few years. And a lot of that has been fueled by, having, before I joined the company, they had like 1 or 2 lead gen sources total, right? And to build, a $60 million company on the back of, 1 or 2 lead sources is one, incredible, but also too risky, right? And so one of the things that I brought to the table when joining WinChoice was we diversified in that space really quickly, right? Brought on new lead gen partners, brought on an agency that I'm really close with and does great work for us. Started generating our own traffic through owned and operated sites, stuff that was not happening prior to my arrival, and then also working on a new website at the moment too. So like lots of different things, not just one thing is leading to that, but at the same time, I couldn't do all that without the sales team. We made some great sales hires through 2025 and continue to hire on that team. And those guys are crushing it right now. So ultimately, they're making me look good at the end of the day. I just got to bring the leads to the table, and they're the ones closing it. So I'd say all of the above.
Yeah, Ryan, I just, out of my honestly curiosity, so Andrew, sorry to stay your job a little bit here. But was there anything specific? Like, did you have a list when you were looking to grow the partner channel of specific things that you were looking for to kind of say, hey, in order for us to start working with this partner, at the very minimum needed X, Y, Z?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, I had my eye coming from, having two partners. There's a lot of companies out there to pick from at that point, right? So I had my eye on a few companies that I wanted to work with, but at the end of the day, if you are not saying yes to my do you offer trusted form question, you're not even going to be in consideration at this point. Like, I think that is like my one question that I can very clearly say like yes or no to. If you're not supplying trusted form certificates, I don't have the ability to work with you. So I'd say that's definitely up there. Others that have don't have the ability to share their creative or websites that they're generating leads on. Those are always a little suspect to me. So I would say that's another one at the top. But like, yeah, if you're not giving me trusted form certificates, I can't protect our business, and so you got to have that at the very minimum. So.
It makes complete sense. And yeah, that's something. Trusted form is definitely something that we'll get into and talk about more. I want to kind of like look at from like a technology standpoint. It was interesting to me. I've been again at ActiveProspect for nearly 4 years. And for the first 3, there weren't many people in my experience or many companies talking about lead scoring. And that over the past year has really taken off to where, companies are wanting to use different partnerships they have. Like, we work directly at ActiveProspect with Faraday and Think Unlimited, right? And these are just a couple of options of lead scorings that you can kind of tap into to really optimize on the leads that you guys are receiving. And that honestly goes across not just home services, right? But that's one of the things that we can point at that is not vertical specific and can help in insurance and legal and all the above. So I think that's one of the things that I mentioned that I've seen there as far as like strategies and growth. Another thing is leveraging data. So a while back, right, you might have the form and you might have what's on the form, the first and last name, email, phone number, those basic data, and the data will be provided to the lead buyers. And then it's like, okay, this is the data we have. What can we do with this? But I think, especially as the sellers become smarter with the data that they're getting from the consumers, right, then providing that to the buyers like yourself can be smarter in using that data on the back end as well. And in my experience, that's definitely helped with some of the growth around the industry.
Yep. Yeah. Interestingly enough, we for about the last 9 to 10 months, we have been working with a lead scoring provider. I would say one of the things, and we're going to get into this, I think, a little later on as well. So I'll save some of that for those topics. But your output is only as good as your input is something that I've kind of lived by, I guess, the last 12, 14 years of my career. And that is so true for lead scoring, for AI, for any of these new technologies that are out there and that are accelerating business growth at this point. And so I think that's one thing when you're talking about the data that comes with the lead, the data that you can append to the lead, through Lead Conduit and have, a wealth of data at your fingertips. I think one of the things that we are constantly evolving with and working on, and have been throughout most of this year is just data hygiene, right? And data integrity, and making sure that what you're putting in is something that you can actually get back out. And when you get it back out, it's something that's, actionable, clean information that you can actually make decisions on. So I think it's a big part of what you're talking about as well, and something that companies definitely need to focus on there.
Absolutely.
Awesome. All right. Before we move on, that leads us directly into our first poll of the day. Are you a lead buyer, a lead seller, or both? Please get your votes in now. We're going to circle back to the results shortly. But while people are voting, Ryan, you've worked on both sides of the lead generation equation. What does a winning growth strategy look like from both a lead buyer and a lead seller perspective? Let's start with the buyers.
I mean, I think in this day and age, with as many companies that are out there and ultimately as many channels of marketing that are available to market through, I think diversification is number one. When you're a lead buyer, you have to be working with many companies. I've heard often this approach of like, oh, I work with 40 and 50 and 60 different lead companies. And I think like, maybe that works for some companies. I think that my approach is a little bit different in that case. Is like, yes, there's got to be diversification, but I'm looking for diversification across channels, not just diversification of, companies that I work with. Right. And so I try to take that a little bit deeper. And at the same time, I think if you're working with too many companies, it's really difficult to maximize the value of each of those partnerships. And so that's another thing that, I kind of take to heart. And with our partnerships, I'm looking for maximum value there, right? And so if I'm working with 40, 50, 60 different companies, or my team is working with that many companies, it's really difficult to maximize the value of a single partnership when you're having to look across all of those partnerships, even with really good data at your fingertips. So I think from a lead buyer perspective, you got to have the diversification, but you also have to be looking at how you can go deeper into that partnership and create, transparency between the companies that you're working with to make sure that you're maximizing the value that you get out of that partnership as well. I think you're going to ask about the seller side. I'll let you kind of prompt that for me.
That was good restraint. That was very, very good restraint. Dion, where do you see lead buyers struggling the most?
Yeah, so just really quick, I mean, to Ryan's point, Ryan, I agree. Like anyone that's worked with ActiveProspect, a lead buyer or lead seller, you guys know that we are big on connections, right? So we want you to make as many connections as possible, and as many connections as you feel that you need. But it's also important at the end of the day when you're having those conversations to make sure that you are working with the right people, right? And it's not necessarily they're doing anything wrong, right? But it just may be it doesn't align with your strategies, and it could be vice versa as well. So I think that's a big point there. Regarding buyers and struggling, Andrew, I mean, I think it sounds simple, but a lot of the times it's buying leads that just don't have anything to do with the interest as the buyer, right? Like you hear a lot of buyers that feel that they are wasting money by getting leads directly into the funnel. And that's why we really, push the use of lead conduit, right? Because what lead conduit is doing is right. It's sitting in the middle of your lead provider as well as your CRM and your call center. And it's doing a lot of the vetting for you in real time, right? So it's not really going to affect your speed to lead or anything like that. And so that's a big reason we push it. Of course, you can get leads directly into your CRM, right? But how many of those will you know if they're a duplicate? Like, how do you know, especially if you're looking at a certain market and getting leads in a certain market and possibly working with a vendor that is national, like how do you know that those leads that you're receiving are within your specific market and you're not blowing money there?
Yeah, I think the other area that I think lead buyers could do a better job of, or kind of, to along the lines of struggling on the lead buyer side, I think you got to know your customer. I think that's something that I've learned really quickly in kind of the last couple of times that I've led marketing for a company. Very different, companies, right? So leading marketing for a solar company and leading marketing for a window replacement and manufacturing company, very, very different customers, right? And very different areas of the country. And so what I learned in the solar space, I can apply some of that to what I'm doing right now. But what I'm learning in the window space is even in our markets, like our customer is very different than what I would have expected it to be. And so going back to kind of the data points that we're talking about and how data goes through lead conduit, and all of that is valuable to build yourself a persona or profiles of customers, right? And so again, the more data that you can get on who that customer is, the more targeted you can be with ads with the companies that you're working with. And that's kind of why even I've stuck to the companies that I work with at this point, is like they're serving us leads that are our customer. Like they and maybe they don't even know that is the truth. But at the end of the day, conversion, tells the story. And like what I'm seeing is the companies we're working with are very much in line with like our target customer. And so that's something that comes from, the Faradays of the world, and all of the data that we put through the conduit into our CRM. So,
yeah, and I think that's a really good point, right? And that's kind of ties into why, like, for my seat as a senior customer success manager, we want to make sure that, hey, it's not just about blocking the leads, right? And a lot of our buyers know this, right? Lead conduit isn't put there to kind of create some tension with your partners, right? But it's to help you ingest the leads that are best for your company, and then help use that data and provide it and have those conversations with your partners so that they can kind of make changes on their end. You guys can get to where you need to be and have a long lasting partnership. So I think that's a really big piece of it. And I think it also ties into, right, when you're struggling like with all of this, at the end of the day, you also have an end of the funnel where you have that call center, you have that person that you're paying to speak to that consumer, right? And any buyer, I'm sure, like yourself, Ryan, would tell you that every second that you're paying that person in the call center, you want them talking to someone that is a legitimate opportunity to convert. And so that's why it's really important, like you said, to know your audience, and use and leverage different tools such as Lead Conduit to get that information. Even what I suggest in Lead Conduit, right? You should never really start using one of our enhancements and start actioning off of them or rejecting leads right away. Right? You at least want a couple of weeks, maybe a month, depending on how you do things internally, to look at that data, evaluate it against your conversion data, and then you make the decision on these are the type of leads that I'm going to be rejecting because I know they're not going to convert for my team.
Yeah. And I think working with your vendor partners on that as well, right? Like, I think that's something that, coming from both sides of the equation and seeing the vendor side in that perspective, or the lead seller side in that perspective, being able to work with partners to say, hey, this is not converting. And even if they're able to get some of that stuff out of the mix before, rejection, that ultimately saves you transaction, counts in Lead Conduit. So there's ways to ultimately even go a little bit further with that as well. So I think both sides of that is true.
Before we get into lead sellers, let's circle back to the results of our poll really quick. Looks like most attendees here are lead buyers, although sellers are represented. And looking at the chat, a few people chimed in as well. Thank you to everyone that responded. Ruben Ugarte, I know that guy. He was once a buyer. Matthew's a seller. David Evans, a super buyer. So got a lot of response and a lot of feedback. All right. Other side of the aisle, Ryan, I know you're excited for this one. How can lead sellers stand out in such an overly saturated market?
Yeah, I think it goes without saying, transparency, number one, right? You got to be, I have to, as a buyer, understand where the leads are coming from, what you're doing to generate the leads, the ads that you're using to generate the leads. So I think, one of the questions that I'll ask when I'm vetting a new lead partner is like, hey, just share some landing pages that you generate a decent amount of volume on, or can you share your ad creative with me and tell me what your team is going for here with ads. I think there's so many ways to generate leads digitally and online these days that to stand out, I think you should be leading with that. I think you should be leading with the idea of, hey, this is who we are, this is how we operate, this is how we generate leads, this is where they come from. It saves me a ton of time in terms of trying to decide whether you're the right company to work with or not. So I think that's the number one side of things. I think also, just having a dialogue around what the targets are that we are looking for. Often I see lead sellers come to the table and say, hey, I'll give you leads for $60 a lead, or I'll give you leads for $75 a lead. And it's like, I don't know if that's good or bad at the end of the day, right? Like, there's leads that I pay $120 for, right? And there's leads that I pay $20 for. And ultimately that spectrum is based off of how they convert in the bottom of the funnel and where my marketing cost needs to be. So, making the dialogue about my goals and, our marketing cost goals, and if we can get to those targets, and then ultimately backing into a price per lead that works, I think is probably a better way to approach companies than to say like, hey, here's my price sheet, buy leads at these prices, right? So I think those two are kind of big ones for me.
Yeah, Ryan, I think you hit actually partially at the tail end of the last question on one of the things that I was thinking, which is it's easy for a lead seller to throw prices at you, right? And say, hey, I'll charge you X amount for a lead. But where are they getting those from? How are they generating it? And you mentioned doing some of that legwork on the front end, right? So I know of some lead vendors that lead buyers really appreciate the fact that they're doing some of that. For example, looking for bot information, right? Of these leads that we're generating, right? Are we able to tell if it's a bot before we even pass it over to the lead buyer? Or the phone number, right? Of these leads that we're generating, is that phone number, is there going to be a good chance that the person on the other end is going to pick up the phone when my buyer partner actually dials out? So I think that's one of the biggest ways to stand out in my mind, right? Doing that lead work. And like you said, once you're having those meetings and having those conversations, ultimately it's up to the lead seller to explain, right? And to show to the lead buyer that, hey, this is what we're doing. This is how we can help you. These are the type of leads we're providing, and show that it's going to be best for the partnership moving forward.
Yeah. I mean, interestingly enough, going back to the pricing conversation, right? Like, If you're doing a bunch of that legwork up front and you're taking those leads out of the funnel that are not converting, what you're really doing is you're really allowing yourself leverage to ask for higher prices, right? And that to me, like that's one of the things that lead seller may come to me and say is, "Hey, I'll give you leads for $25 a lead." And in my mind, $25 a lead is pretty cheap, right? Like it's a low dollar lead. Well, generally speaking, that equates to low value. And if it doesn't equate to low value, then you're not going to be able to generate very much of them at $25 a lead, right? So it's like, if you can, if I wish there were more lead sellers that would look at the value equation of the lead to the degree where it's like, you don't have to sell me thousands and thousands and thousands of leads. If you sell me hundreds of leads that convert really well, I'm actually willing to pay a lot more for that lead, right? And so that gives them the ability to then reinvest in their funnel and continue to put back into the funnel what we're paying them to get more back out of it. And ultimately, that's the symbiotic relationship of the good vendors. You keep increasing price, but you keep increasing value as you go up that funnel, right? And so to me, that's I'd rather have 20 vendors that I'm buying hundreds of leads from at a higher price, because ultimately the efficiencies are better on the back end, than have one vendor that I'm buying 20,000 leads from that the efficiencies are really low, because ultimately that, to your earlier point, the human capital cost around that, right? Like just to be able to call them and text them and email them and try to get them on the phone, it's a different game, right? So all of that to your point, Dion.
Yeah, and just to wrap that piece up, I think what it boils down to, right? And like you said, any buyer will probably tell you they'd be willing to pay $200 for a lead if they knew it was going to convert for 20,000. Right. So it's about knowing those leads, right, and where the leads are coming from. And if you have the high confidence in that seller and the leads that are provided based on how those are being generated, like you said, you'll be willing to up that price and pay it.
For sure.
That leads us into a question I really like here. I think it's a good time to address it. From Ryan Tyson: how important is disposition feedback for you with vendor relationships?
I mean, it's critical, right? Like to me in that realm, like if you don't trust a lead vendor or a lead vendor partner to give them back their own leads and the disposition of that lead, you probably shouldn't be working with that company, number one, right? Number two, it's the only way that they are going to be able to do anything for you, right? So like if they can't see the results, at least, again, from the buyer and seller perspective, if a seller cannot see the results of what is happening with the leads that they're selling you, what do you expect them to do with that, right? I guess would be the question that I have. So I mean, ultimately, kind of the most critical part of that. I know you guys released something not that long ago that was more in the feedback realm. We're big enough at this point to have kind of automated reporting go to our vendors, and may not use that within WinChoice, but I think some of the call it SMBs in the space might benefit from something like that. And I think vendors would also benefit from that. So absolutely critical to have the data and pass it back.
Yeah, to that point, Ryan, like you said, I mean, you guys, if you're getting the data from the partners, that's only going to help for you. But from the terms of technology, right, that's one of the things that we've had a lot of clients ask for, right? Is there a way that within Lead Conduit, within the ActiveProspect tool suite, can we see this data? And now we're working towards and have worked towards being able to, for starting with Salesforce, and eventually we want to touch on every CRM, right? To be able to pull those fields into Lead Conduit, see that against the data within Lead Conduit, and not necessarily have to look at it outside of the platform versus when you're looking at the lead funnel inside of the platform. So like you said, if there's anyone that wants to know more about that, please reach out. But it's critical to have a view at what that conversion and disposition feedback looks like in order to scale.
And a quick note on that for the ActiveProspect product team: if I could see like results by lead source in a report at some point in ActiveProspect where I get the feedback coming back in, that would be awesome. So that would be something that I'd definitely look for with you guys.
Shifting to a more overarching view now, Ryan, how does compliance factor in for lead buyers and sellers trying to grow in this environment?
Yeah, I mean, I think the environment for compliance has shifted a lot. As
A lot.
yeah, a lot. And so it's kind of like a constant ringing in your ears, almost, is the way that I would describe it, right? Like it's something that you have to constantly be thinking about as a marketer. Certainly something you have to be constantly thinking about as a lead generator. And I think that having tools in place that help ease that ringing, I think is a big part of my job as head of marketing, is making sure that anything that we're putting into our funnel is somebody that actually made that request, somebody that we can call, that we can text, that we can email, that we can reach out to in the medium that they want to be communicated within. And so all of that kind of goes back to all the data points that we're talking about as leads kind of flow through lead conduit, but also comes down to making sure that I have, I won't, there's times where I'll reject leads where it doesn't have a trusted form certificate, right? Like there's times where I'll reject leads if it doesn't have a certain value on a trusted form certificate. Like for example, there are times where I reject leads where it's over a certain age, right? Based on the value that I'm getting in trusted forms. So all of that to me makes my job a lot easier as a head of marketing, is to make sure that the leads that are coming into our funnel are leads that we can call. And ultimately something that I can feel confident that my team reaching out to is going to get a person on the phone and have a selling conversation with them. So.
Yeah, and to that point, Ryan, I mean, you trusted form retain, you mentioned it. It's really become like a standard, right, in the industry. You are not the first, the second, or the 20th client that I have that have said that, right? And even to the point where you're making it a criteria within Lead Conduit, right? You're telling your partners that, hey, we absolutely need this trusted form certificate. And you're telling the system that as well. And it's like, you won't have to deal with it unless that trusted form is there. And to kind of go more on a broad spectrum of the trusted form, right? You have trusted form certify, which is on the back end of the script, which is kind of going to create that trusted form link that you're getting. And it's important that we're sending that to your CRM, right? Because at that point, you'll be able to click that link and have access to it for up to 5 years. So that's really covering that statute of limitation. And that's a big part of the compliance. Now, I do want to touch on a common misconception about trusted form and kind of clear it up here. And it's that I've heard people in the past say, having that trusted form will automatically mean that you're compliant. That's not necessarily the case, right? So the trusted form will give you the ability to look at that video replay and see essentially what the consumer saw when they're filling out the form. But what if that form is not compliant with the FCC rules, right? You would still have an issue there. So that's where I really encourage anyone using trusted form to still have some sort of process in which you're ensuring that the forms themselves are compliant in those forms, especially if you're not hosting them, that the partners have them set up in a way where you and your company will be compliant and won't be at risk for someone filling out that form, for sure.
Yeah, it's a really good point. We actually do have someone on our staff that goes through on a regular basis and actually watches some trusted form playbacks. So something that I think Steve, actually CEO of ActiveProspect, mentioned to me a while back, like you should probably do this. And it was something that has actually benefited us in the past. There's a bunch of metadata on those too, to be able to pass through. And that documentation of consent, when the FCC ruling was going to go into effect, that got pushed back. That's kind of how I saw documentation of consent, is if I'm getting the consent with the trusted form certificate and I'm passing that link to my CRM, I'm documenting that I have that consent at this point. And as long as I'm doing some checks on the back end, to make me feel comfortable that I do have that consent, then at that point I'm not as worried about it.
Yeah, and you also mentioned the metadata. I think that's a big point to call out, because it's not just that screen recording, right? There's also things like the domain, a page URL, approximate geolocation. You mentioned earlier the age, right? And ensuring that it's not an old lead that you're expecting that you just went through. So all that's information through Trusted Form Retain and through Trusted Form Insights that you can get and leverage, and just appended data, right? I mentioned earlier, there's a ton of data you can get from your partners, right? But even through Trusted Form, there's more metadata that you can get and kind of break down there. And also to mention, just on the point, again, not to harp on it, but the point of how important it is to a lot of the buyers, right? we felt it was so important. We created here at Active Prospect a specific page for home improvement providers that are trusted partners of Active Prospect, right? So I think we'll be throwing the link in there for anyone to view, but those are all of our partners that we work with that that if you start a relationship with them, they'll be able to provide trusted form and keep you compliant there. And so take a look at that. And also if you're not, if you're a lead seller and you don't see yourself there and you want to get in front of more companies, then at the bottom of that page, you'll be able to apply to have your logo there. And it's kind of just taking that next step of those connections that we know all of our clients love and helping streamline that.
Yeah. Dion, do you think compliance, I mean, I feel like I know the answer, is still largely viewed as a burden, as a box you have to check? Or do you think more companies are seeing the benefit from foundation to ceiling compliant lead gen efforts?
Yeah, for sure. I'm curious to what you think the answer is, but I'm going to say you think the answer is B. So yeah, it's definitely more of a, I don't know, not to be dramatic, a way of life, right? Like
Yeah.
I have a few clients that even though the FCC rules did not go into effect, that's kind of helped them set themselves straight, right? And they realize in that process of trying to prepare for those rules that may or may not come back at one day, that, hey, we were doing things wrong here, or we left ourselves really open for a lawsuit here. How can we improve this? And so they made those changes indefinitely regardless, right? And it's a decision that their business made to where, hey, we need to use things like Trusted Form Verify, for example, for those who don't know. Trusted Form Verify being Active Prospect's consent management language manager. It's one of those things where it's still always a suggestion, like you said, Ryan, that you have someone go through those trusted forms and check those as well. But then when you have a consent language manager like Verify, that's going to plop into the same screen for you in the UI, all of your different variations of consent language. So without even having to go into each of those trusted forms, you can see, okay, this consent language mentioned wording that do not align with us at all. Let us talk to our partners about it and get that clear and kind of, again, streamline that process. And even if you decide, you can decide to action off of that and filter out those leads that don't have consent language that aligns with your company goals.
Yep. I think that managing by exception part is where that becomes valuable right now too, is, ultimately, if you can pop up, to the top of the screen just by sorting that there isn't consent language, or there's consent language that's too short, that doesn't mention, pre-recorded calls or SMS or whatever the case is, I think all of that makes it easy to be able to have those conversations too.
Yeah, and I think it's all kind of like a package, right? So you have that for trusted form, but then we also seek out partnerships with, and Ron, I think you've used these in the past, and possibly currently using them with Contact Center Compliance for their known litigator tool, Blacklist Alliance for their litigator tool, right? It's not just the compliance on the piece of that, what language is on the form, but also like, are these people that are reaching out to you trying to bait you to get you to reach out to them so that they can sue you, right? So using tools like those third-party tools that we have to kind of call that out and make sure you stay far away from those phone numbers that have been deemed, hey, these are folks that have been in an open lawsuit before or currently in one. We don't want to deal with that or even have our team come close to calling them.
Yeah, those are what I call high value rejections, right? Like we don't reject often for those things, but every time we do, I look at it and I'm like, man, that saved us a bunch of money. So yeah.
We don't reject often, but when we do, it's with vigor. Jumping into another question here from the audience. What compliance missteps are sellers making that hurt their credibility?
Oh boy. I mean, again, I think like basics would be not sharing or like showing TCPA language, right? Or like giving you the ability to view what their consent language is. I think is a big one. I think that's a red flag for me. Like immediately, if you're not going to share kind of the end of the form experience with me, it's hard for me to buy a lead from you at that point. So I would say that that's the case. And then, yeah, I mean, I go back to this as my, kind of black and white. It's like, if you don't have trusted form and you're not able to pass me a trusted form certificate, I think that's a big red flag for me. So that would be another one that they would be making. But I mean, little stuff too. Not capturing the right phone number at times. You can do some data appends on phone numbers and make sure that you're not getting like I think it's called like the reassigned numbers database or something like that, not getting a number that is somebody else's phone number. And then ultimately, recycling leads. I think that's something that all of us as lead buyers at this point, which interesting to come from both sides of that equation, but ultimately like recycling leads and just reselling leads just to do it. I see that happen pretty often. And it's pretty easy to tell with some of the tools that we have in place from you guys that's the case. And so having those conversations and making sure that people aren't doing stuff like that.
Yeah, Ryan, you touched on what my answer was going to be, which is simply like, I think it sounds simple again, but right, as a seller, you need to have the right process in place to make sure that these forms that you might be hosting for your buyers are aligned with what they would expect to see, right? And if you don't have that right process in place and that buyer finds that issue before you find it, then it's, that leaves you open to the buyer possibly thinking, okay, well, was this on purpose or whatever the case may be there. So make sure you have that right process in place again. And that's just having the conversation with your buyer, right? And making sure that those align with what they want.
Yeah, it's interesting, like coming from the lead selling side in my early career, you can feel the hesitation that people have. Like, are you actually generating real leads, right? And then being on the lead buyer side at this point, I now have that same hesitation talking with companies. And so the more you can just be upfront about what you're doing, what the consumer experience and what the consumer journey looks like, I think those are all great ways to be able to kind of overcome the compliance conversation and make your clients' jobs easier at that point.
So we've talked about several different aspects of the modern marketing mix. Ryan, how would you recommend balancing compliance, diversification, and cost efficiency with all of this?
So it's a tough job. Yeah, I mean, ultimately, I think it all kind of goes together, right? Because at the end of the day, if you have somebody that is serious about, let's say in our case, like if they're serious about getting their windows replaced, right? And they're out on, in a digital environment searching for window replacement companies, then I think that customer is going to be more apt, or that prospect is going to be more apt to go through an experience that is something that they know what they're doing, that they know where they're going to be going, that they know who's going to be contacting them. And so all of those things relate to the compliance conversation, right? Like at the end of the day, if the consumer knows who's contacting them, knows why they're contacting them, knows why they filled out the form, and ultimately who's going to be the one responding to that form inquiry, I mean, all of that covers compliance immediately. So it's almost like, you're balancing quality with compliance, but ultimately they're the same thing almost at the end of the day, right? And then as far as cost efficiency is concerned, going back to it being a serious prospect, like we're going to close, if we're doing our job properly as, call center operations, as a sales team, as an installation team, like we're going to close a healthy number of those, which is going to give us the ability to reinvest in those partnerships and ultimately take the sales dollars that we're making from those leads and, give them back in marketing cost dollars to lead sellers. So I think, it's all interrelated in my mind. And it's something that I wish more people kind of saw that dynamic of like, you kind of have to have all of it, and the consumer journey matters, right? And what a consumer sees and what they agree to matters a lot in our conversion and ultimately in the quality and compliance of leads that come through.
Yeah, I don't have much to add there. You hit the nail on the head. I was going to say, I think it's less about balance and more about integration, right? And finding the right process of integrating all three seamlessly so that you can have the most efficient experience as possible. So I 100% agree.
That was so eloquent, man. That's awesome.
Very succinct. Are there any marketing channels or tools you see as underutilized in terms of lowering cost per lead?
I think AI and lead scoring are ones that strike me as they can be really valuable. I think that I am approaching them with a healthy degree of skepticism at the moment, just because again, like the inputs are going to control the outputs, right? And I got to make sure that our inputs are good first there. So I think we are personally underutilizing those. I don't know if the entire industry is in that boat, but we're certainly underutilizing those at the moment. But for good reason. We want to make sure that what we get back out and the data that we get back out is going to be data that's quality and actionable. And so we got to make sure that what we're putting in is good first. So I would say that, yeah, we'll leave it there for now.
Yeah, and that's just another opportunity, for me to say, although I have no skin in the game, lead conduit is one that I see often underutilized. Seriously, though, it's you oftentimes might see clients that are using lead conduit and using it to do the basics of like deduping, right? Making sure they're in your area and then sending the lead to the CRM, which is like, okay, that works. And you may think that that works, but there's a lot more ways that you can be efficient in using it, even with integrating things such as Hatch, right? Or having an SMS system to where you're using it for lead qualification and nurturing, right? Those things are often underutilized. Some folks don't even know, hey, these tools that I maybe already have had can be integrated seamlessly into lead conduit, again, without affecting our speed to lead, but making sure that we're getting the best leads and have the best processes possible. So yeah, lead conduit, again, if you're a current client, reach out to your customer success manager, right? And just basically have the conversation. What ways can I use this more efficiently? Right? Because there's always going to be an answer. It's going to depend on who you are and what you do and what that answer is. There's always going to be an answer to that.
Yeah, it's interesting coming from my perspective of like come in and into implemented lead conduit at several companies, right? Have seen it implemented lots more times with the lead seller side with companies. I was actually doing that for Quinn Street in my past life. And I would say you're 100% right. There's so many use cases to that. And I think I take that for granted. Like coming from that background, I have a lot of those use cases in place, and it's just like, it's second nature to me, right? Like I go through and my flows are, 14, 16, 18 steps long, depending on the lead vendor, right? And like, but there's often companies where it's like, oh, dupe check and pass it on to the CRM. I mean, even a good example earlier this year, we actually went ahead and like changed up our lead posting to where we post to our call center software first before we even post to our CRM. And it's helped our speed to lead by like hundreds of %, right? So that would be a simple use case, but something that like we were posting to our CRM first and letting the CRM post to the call center software. And we're okay. I would say speed to lead was average at that point, but now we're better, like much better than average based on posting directly to the call center software. And there's some cool stuff within the call center software that allows us to look at our DNC lists, for example, and so that's a whole nother like benefit to thinking about your flows and thinking about ultimately your business process related to those flows. I think that's something that people should spend more time on. And the configurability within the platform is literally, in my mind, kind of like unlimited. And so as long as you can develop a process around it, you can put it into place within lead conduit. So
last topic today, gentlemen, and don't shoot the messenger. Ryan mentioned it first. It wouldn't be a webinar if we didn't discuss the two buzziest letters in any industry, AI. Ryan, where is the home services industry headed, and how do AI and automation factor into that future?
I think, you're hearing it across the board, right? Like you have to be looking at AI as a part of your business at this point, or you're going to get left behind. And I'm a strong believer in that, but I'm also a strong believer in making sure that what we implement is going to be something that's going to be sustainable and useful and something that adds value to the business. So, there's been plenty of times where we've tested different AI solutions within our business and ultimately gone away from them because they were not the right solution, or they ultimately just didn't work for like our workflow and our process, right? And so I think, again, it all comes back to inputs. Like your inputs have to be as good as what you want your outputs to be. And so I think that there will continue to be a ton of evolution in that space in a very, very short amount of time. And we're looking at several parts of the consumer journey within our journey that AI would be a great value add to. But we have to make sure that, using a word that Dion was talking about earlier, we have to make sure that that's integrated well enough throughout the journey that it's not clunky, that it's not something that, ultimately takes away from the customer experience. Because at the end of the day, we have a tremendous team that's working with our customers all day long, and we're not looking to take people out of that. We're looking to enhance what they're doing with the customer, right? And so I think there's nuance to that. I think that you have to really think about, again, your business process. You have to think about how the data goes in. You have to think about what outcome you want, from AI and ultimately the automation side of things. And so I think it's going to be a constantly evolving, part of your business. But if you're not looking at it, it's going to be something that's going to be tough to compete in the future.
Yeah, I agree. And even from the perspective of conversations I'm having, like Ryan, you mentioned skepticism earlier. All right, again, you're not the only person that feels that way about AI. But at the end of the day, I think we all know that's the direction everything's going, right? So even if it's, there's going to be more and more tools that are going to be using AI that you'll need to help further your business, right? And some of those aren't necessarily going to be marketed as AI tools, right? But what they're doing and how they're helping you in the background, they're built even using AI, and they're streamlined using AI, right? So I think it's kind of a way of life weird to think about, 10, 15 years ago where it wasn't a thing. But it is now, and it's only going to continue to evolve. So
If there's one thing you want attendees to take away from today's session, what would that be?
You're going to kick that to me first?
Either of you. You got to take it wherever you want.
I can say, personally, I would hone in on the compliance piece, right?
Yeah.
Like, again, even if you're not using trusted form, which we would obviously suggest that you do, having some sort of process as the buyer to where you are checking and know and understand what makes a lead compliant from your side, and making sure that your vendors are sending you that information. And then from the vendor side, right, making sure that you're producing leads that are compliant based on the conversations you've had with your different buyers. So I highly suggest looking into tools and or processes to make sure you're covered there.
I mean, the processes thing comes to mind for me. Again, I've harped on this throughout this webinar, but the inputs equal your outputs. They, only going to be as good. Your output's only going to be as good as your input. But I think if you're going to take one piece away from that topic, is you have to understand your business process well enough to know what input means, right? You have to understand your business process well enough to know what's going into your CRM. So, for example, lead data coming out of lead conduit, there could be 30, 40, 50 fields that you could be posting to your CRM, and understanding what field is the right field to post it to, why you're posting it to that field, and how that field aligns to how the rest of the process through the consumer journey and through the customer journey is going to be used, right? So good example of that within our business that is admittedly a bit of a challenge right now is we've had companies previously build into our HubSpot account. And so there's field groups that are kind of all over the place, right? So we have one field group over here that's pretty standard HubSpot fields, and we have another field group over here that is ultimately, an external company had kind of built this group for us running some process. And so we're actually having to go back and sit down with, each department, sit down with individuals throughout the business and say, hey, why are you using this, right? And help me understand what led you to make this decision. And if you can go through all of that, through all of your departments, it's a laborious task. It's something that takes a tremendous amount of time. You're going to be able to leverage the technology and the AI solutions that are out there much, much better and much, much faster. And you're going to get value out of them much, much faster. So it's like, I know everybody wants to rush to go implement some sort of AI solution, or, man, I have to text somebody with AI, right? And it's like, well, you don't, as long as somebody gets a text and they're able to respond to you, and you give them a good experience. You don't have to do that with AI, right? But if you take the time to develop the process within your business to make sure that the data that is being used within that process ultimately allows you to get a clean output, that AI solution that you implement, 3, 6, 9, 12 months from now is going to be a lot more useful and a lot more valuable.
Before we get into our very quick Q&A today, because this has been awesome. I feel like we could talk about this stuff for about 3 or 4 hours today. It's time for one more quick poll question. What is your next step after this webinar? Going to audit lead vendors, review consent flows, add verification tech, talk to legal compliance, or you're not sure yet? If you're still not sure, again, I highly encourage you to click the link pinned at the top of the chat now. All right, let's move into a quick Q&A section before we finish up here today. If you haven't gotten your questions in, try to get one in there. If we can't answer it now, we might have to be able to address it later in a different capacity. But I'll start with you, Ryan. How long does it typically take to test a new lead vendor before scaling?
It's a good question. Many vendors will tell you, 90, 120 days is what they're looking for from a test period perspective. I would argue that is generally true. Many contractors that I talk to and have been in their shoes now throughout the years will tell you, lead quality within the first week, right? So there's this dichotomy of like, you know that it's going to be a good quality vendor within the first week, but you got to have time, to ultimately see the conversion funnel play out. And I would argue both are right. There are times where you can tell if it is the right vendor to be working with within the first week. Absolutely. But ultimately, if it's a vendor that you have faith and you have confidence in, that they are doing the right things, that they've been transparent with you, that they've shown you the consumer journey and you know where the leads are coming from and they're compliant leads, I do think that you got to give it, 90 to 120 days. Even with a company like we term ourselves a one-call close company still, right? Like we send our sales reps out and most of the sales we get are the first time the sales rep visits the home. And so ultimately we can see pretty quickly when our pipeline closes and ultimately the marketing costs coming with that, but it still takes 60 to 90 days for that whole cycle to play out. So I think, 60, 90, 120, whatever you feel comfortable with in terms of investing in that vendor partnership, but you definitely got to give it some time. Though there are times where I think you can tell pretty quickly if it's not the right company to work with. So,
Dion, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, looking from the technology standpoint, right? I've definitely heard plenty of times that doing the testing through Lead Conduit only streamlines the process, right? So it's even if there's going to be some back and forth, like easily being able to see, hey, here's the information the lead vendor sent. Here's why a test may or may not have worked. And then I guess it's always going to depend on how quickly, right, the partner can get the test over to you. But generally, if you can agree on what information should be sent over, it shouldn't be a long testing period at all.
That was great, guys. Unfortunately, we are out of time. That is going to wrap it up for us today. A huge thank you to Ryan and Dion for sharing your perspectives. And thank you to all of you for showing up, asking great questions, and keeping this conversation sharp and lively. Please mark your calendars and join us on September 10th, 2 weeks from now, for our next webinar, How Insurance Carriers Use AI to Reach and Retain Consumers. Similar to this webinar, it will be geared toward a specific industry, but we believe the insights that will be shared are universal. There will be a link in the chat to register now. Lastly, if you'd like to continue this conversation, please reach out to us via the pinned comment in the chat or by answering our last poll question. Again, I'm Andrew Bailey. Have a great day. Don't be scared of AI. You get out what you put in, and we'll see you in 2 weeks.